One of the best jobs I had was as a waitress at the Fort Lee Diner, which was a fancy town on top of our house, so we met really fancy people there. And I was one of the counter waitresses competing with the waitress at the next counter and getting very few male customers sitting at my counter because she had enormous breasts and she had a gimmick that the guys loved. She would balance 2 coffee cups in each hand, that's 4, and 2 more on each breast, and she would hip her way through the doors. And so every guy in town wanted her counter rather than my counter. But fortunately for me, my mom had told me to compete I should braid up my long blonde hair and put red ribbons to match my little red turtleneck, and that's exactly what I did. And lucky for me, the night I did it was the night that Ramon Simone walked in and asked Nick, the manager, if he could sit at my counter. And that was my first lucky break because he offered me a ride home and became my boyfriend and moved me to New York City and paid for a whole week at the Barbizon Hotel for Women, and I never went back again to New Jersey. Ray loaned me $1,000 to start my business. He took 51% of the stock. After all, he was the financial partner, he explained, and I was the working partner, and I took 49%, and I started a small rental brokerage company in New York City, and that was the beginning of Corcoran Simone, my first business. That business I built for 7 years with Ramon, and it was going so well. We had 14 salespeople. I had moved in with him by then, much to my parents' dismay. I was disowned from the family. They're very religious and very proper in every way. And then his children moved in with me right after I moved. I didn't even know he had children for 2 years. So I was the mom of 3, which was comfortable. I was used to minding kids, certainly. And that's when Ramon Simone came home almost 7 years to the day and announced to me that he was going to marry my secretary. I just couldn't believe it. I thought it was some idea of a bad joke. Only the day before, I loved Tina, the secretary, who was really secretary of both of us. And within that split second, I hated her like I had never hated anyone before. He told me to take my time moving out. I took about a minute, grabbed a toothbrush, was out of that house. And I moved in with my best friend in New York City onto her sofa. And that was the beginning of, I think for me, probably a depression, because I had a very hard time getting up in the morning. And why I took it so hard, I think, was because I was in love with Ray. I couldn't believe that my secretary had been sleeping with him. It seemed mind-boggling to me. And I had loved his children. I had done their homework, cooked their dinners. They were my family by this point. And I just knew that anything I had become was totally a result of what Ray had seen in me. He had found me in my little town, took me right out of the diner, loaned me the money to start the business, and I couldn't imagine living life without him. And so we continued the business for probably 2 years, every day dragging myself into that office. I wanted to fire Tina because it was so impossible, I felt, to work with her. But of course I couldn't because he was the majority partner. And so I continued that for 2 years until one day, I can't even remember what woke me up. I just woke up one morning and thought, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I puffed up my chest and marched right in and told him, we're going to end this partnership and this is how we're going to do it. And I divided the business just like a football draw. He picked the first person, I picked the second. We had 14, we cut them in half. And I moved out of that office late that afternoon with half my money, which was about $12,000. We had $24,000 together. And I marched my salespeople out of that office on a Friday afternoon, and by Monday I had found another office. In those days, you could rent a phone and actually have them delivered the next day. And then all I had to do was go downtown and buy some cheap metal desks, get them in the space, and we were back in business. That was the beginning of the Corcoran Group, which became the business that made me very rich. And right before I left the office and leaving Ray and Tina, and I remember it was like being in a movie, like slow motion, like I'm out of here. And Ray said, you know, Barbara, you'll never succeed without me. And thank God he said that to me, because I knew he had just handed me an insurance policy to succeed for the rest of my life. Because every time I thought of failing, or every time my back was against the wall, and every single real estate recession where I was out of money, out of luck, and thinking I was going down, I would just think of those words and a miracle would happen. I would think of one more idea to try to stay in business. And without those words, I think I would have given up many, many times. And that's what kept me on the straight and narrow, pushing ahead, because I couldn't stand the thought that he would watch me fail. Amazing how these negative things really play out in life. But That's how it played out for me. Well, of course, 20 years later, I did succeed without him, and I sold my business for $66 million cash. And you know what? Things worked out for him too, because he married Tina, had 3 more children with her, and he's still married. And from the looks of it, what I saw about 5 years ago at my book party, he looked like he was happier than I was with my husband, Bill. So go figure. Everybody got what they wanted and everybody won, but that's the way it goes.